Hello, and welcome to Breast Cancer Conversations, a podcast brought to you by survivingbreastcancer.org. I am Laura Carfing, breast cancer survivor and founder of survivingbreastcancer.org, a nonprofit organization providing community, education, and resources to empower those diagnosed with breast cancer and their caregivers from day one and beyond. Hello. How are you doing today? I am so excited that you are tuning in for this particular episode. I am speaking with Shelly Rosenfeld to talk about legal cancer resources. She is a wealth of information. We go deep. We dive into ADA policies, Americans with Disabilities Act, for example. We talk about my own experience working with my employer and how I navigated some of these different difficult conversations and different situations, etc. And so if you are someone who's been diagnosed with breast cancer and want to fully understand what your rights are, this episode is for you. I'm so excited for you to tune in. Before we jump into the interview with Shelly, I just want to make sure that you are fully aware of all of the resources that survivingbreastcancer.org provides. Obviously, you found our podcast, Breast Cancer Conversations, but I do want to share that you can hop on over to survivingbreastcancer.org/events to see over 300 of our programs that we offer annually to support you through the emotional, mental health, wellness, and physical movement of understanding your breast cancer diagnosis. So yes, we are there to support you and complement everything that your medical care team is giving you from the emotional well-being side. So I hope you can take advantage of some of our support groups, expressive writing classes. We have poetry slams. We have movement classes such as Qigong, yoga, Pilates, meditation, journaling, art therapy. I mean, the list really goes on. So I really hope to connect with you and see you on one of our virtual Zoom events. Now let's get into today's content. Welcome to the conversation. You have such an amazing background and coming to us with resources, legal resources for those people who've been diagnosed with breast cancer. And this is such a hot topic because unless you've gone through, medical trauma, so to speak, you really don't know what your rights are as a patient. You don't necessarily know what questions to ask. You don't know necessarily when you're talking to your doctors, will my insurance cover everything that they're recommending to me, et cetera. And so it can be incredibly overwhelming, not only to be dealing with a cancer diagnosis, but then to navigate the health and medical system and the legal side of a cancer diagnosis. So we are going to dive into some of these topics, and I am so excited that you're here today. So if I can turn things over to you, if you would like to introduce yourself, the organization that you're with, and a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, I'm glad to be here, and you already brought up some really important points. So my name is Shelly Rosenfeld. I'm director of the Cancer Legal Resource Center. It is a program of the 501c3 nonprofit Disability Rights Legal Center. And what we do is we provide free legal resources nationwide to people affected by cancer. So this can be the patient, it can be an oncologist, it can be a patient navigator or a caregiver, basically anyone that wants to learn more about someone they care about or themselves can contact us. And we provide information that's confidential, and the basic kind of most common way that we help folks is either they fill out an online intake or call our toll-free phone number, and then we will do an intake on the phone, then do some research and send information that's responsive to their situation. So while I am a lawyer, we don't actually provide legal advice or take someone on as a client. That way we're able to really provide information nationwide and to help as many people as we do. So we have so many callers from all different types of cancer diagnoses and even different stages. So even within one cancer diagnosis, as I'm sure you and so many others are aware, having, even within the breast cancer diagnosis, having a different, stage can really give rise to different concerns or different situations. So we'll be seeking out breast cancer or in some cases cancer generally, but I know each person's situation is so specific to themselves. So hopefully the information will ultimately at the end of this that someone will take away and say, wow, I have more rights than I knew I had. And I actually feel more empowered. And there are places I can look or go to for some more specific details. But hopefully someone will come away saying, wow, I didn't even know that here's a better way I could approach something because I have these rights.
Oh, it's fantastic. And I appreciate that overview. It's so amazing to be able to offer this type of support and resources nationwide as well, because I'm sure there are state specific, rules and regulations and access to to legal information that are state specific. And so, even on our podcast as well, we want to stress that this is information and education and empowerment only. We are not here giving medical advice or legal advice, et cetera, but really just talking about our own personal experiences and how we can really help the cancer community. So I appreciate that, Shelly. So diving in, I don't even know where to begin. I have so many questions for you. When should someone, like a patient, contact you or start thinking about their rights as someone who's been diagnosed with, in this case, breast cancer, right? You're so overwhelmed that you just get this diagnosis. A lot of times we're waiting a couple days, if not weeks, to get the results of a biopsy. And your mind is just like racing. Like, how do I tell my spouse, my kids, my employer, etc.? And you don't even know the stage, as you were alluding to. Is it early stage? Is it curable? Is it treatable? Is it late stage cancer for which there is no cure? And now I'm thinking about, a truncated lifespan and all of these things I have to prepare, depending on, your mind just races. And so at what point in this experience, do people, or should people, would you recommend, start thinking about their rights?
Sure. Well, I think there's no wrong time to contact us. We get calls from folks, of course, and it's completely understandable, are really focused on their medical care. And even if they do have concerns, whether it's about their job or health insurance appeals or their rights as a caregiver, they might call us after there's been a problem. Now, of course, I would say it's always a good idea to contact us even before there's a problem, to just learn, okay, well, what are my rights? And, what information can I learn? So I would say that, it's best if someone has that bandwidth to contact us, or maybe their spouse or caregiver would contact us to learn, okay, well, here's the situation I'm concerned about. What are some, what's information, what are my rights on this topic? So I think that, and we ask questions, okay, well, a little bit more about someone's situation, what state they're in, et cetera, to give more tailored resources. But I think that even I will say that even if someone contacts us really after a lot has transpired, there's no judgment. I'm not going to be mad at someone for contacting us later. I'm just glad that they want to get help. So I will say that even if someone feels like, wow, I made so many mistakes and, they're really hard on themselves, I would say, don't be so hard on yourself. Just, we're glad to help. So I will say, and depending on the situation, of course, we'll provide information, but I will say that, there's, if someone is looking for example, income replacement, and they've applied for Social Security and they've been denied, well, we can give information about Social Security appeals. So that's just an example where I wouldn't lose all hope just because, let's say, someone said that, that maybe they handled a conversation with their boss that they felt didn't go as well, but, in terms of, taking time off or something like that. But that's okay too. It's better to contact us and find out information and then go from there than not contact us at all. But I will say one more thing is that I know that some folks listening today or watching today may think to themselves, you know what? I really don't even feel like I have those 5 minutes to call. And I will say that at least someone can feel good if they're already listening to this or watching this program, and or if they want to listen to any of our webinars or check out. And I know we talked about this even before the podcast, but our free patient legal handbook. That I'll say that there's resources. I always hope that people will get the chance to talk to us or to get information from us. But I will say that even if someone feels like they're overwhelmed, to your point, maybe they've just been so busy with the medical concerns and not really, even though it's important for them, really not feeling like they can handle just even more information. It's just so much information coming their way, but they still want to learn a little bit more. I will say that this is one of the reasons why I do a podcast or why I'll lead webinars, is because we want to make sure that whatever someone feels most comfortable learning, there's no wrong way. They might be more of a person that likes to listen to something, or maybe they might be someone that's, is feels more comfortable reading something. So that's okay too. They'll still get really important information even if they don't call us. So I just want to emphasize and we have handouts on our website as well, just so someone can really feel like, okay, there's not only no wrong time to contact us, but also I will say that, we have resources on our website. Now, I will say that one thing, just because, we bring up this, you brought up the point of talking, when to contact us, is that when someone is considering asking for their job about reasonable accommodations for themselves if they think they might qualify as being disabled under the American with Disabilities Act, that we often suggest. Now, the decision of whether to tell an employer that someone has cancer, that is up to that person. I would say I support them saying something or not saying something. There's no wrong response. The best response is what feels most comfortable for that patient. But I will say that if someone does want to ask for accommodations, I would say ask before work performance is affected. So, for example, if treatment is causing extreme fatigue and someone feels like, you know what, every 2 hours, I really have to put my head down for 10 minutes and take a nap at my desk. If a boss walks by and sees someone sleeping at their desk, they don't know that they're just going to be sleeping for 10 minutes or, they need an accommodation. They might say to themselves, wow, the person's just not doing their job. They're sleeping on the job. And the person could potentially be fired, which we don't want that outcome. So if someone was thinking, okay, I'm going to ask for reasonable accommodations, I have extreme fatigue. I, have if somebody's saying to themselves, okay, well, they have a, breast cancer diagnosis, they're going through treatment, that's, a side effect. Again, I'm just
Absolutely
saying a pure hypothetical, that I would say that at least if someone does want to have that conversation, that they do so before they're actually sleeping at their desk, so that the boss can hopefully, if that's an accommodation the boss is willing to work out with the person, that at least in that case, the person, will hopefully have their job protected. So that's what, and that, accommodation hopefully granted or something, or maybe the employer says, you know what, I don't want other employees seeing someone sleeping at their desk because it's not allowed. But please, here's a room that you can go to. There might be something else that it's, like I said, it's an interactive process and it's really dependent on that person. I don't want to jump ahead, but I just want to make sure that there is some things that make sense to do before rather than later. But even if someone has not talked to their employer before, there's always things that we can help inform someone about their situation. So I would say that I don't ever give up hope. I don't ever give up. I always say there's always, when one door closes, there might be another one that opens. So I do want to have someone to feel positive, and about their situation. So I just wanted to touch upon that.
No, I really
I wanted
appreciate that.
to give everyone the complete information.
Yes, 100%. And your website, I'm just going to look over here quickly to get the right names, the Cancer Legal Resource Center. If you just Google that, you have so much great resources that are downloadable PDFs, questions to ask, things to consider. And so we will link to all of that in our show notes for our webinar and podcast today as well, so our listeners can get access to that information.
That's great.
So you bring up a really great point, whether or not to tell your employer or not if you have breast cancer or cancer in general. And so that was something I personally was struggling with as well. I was diagnosed at 34. Life was going great. I, was in a great relationship. I just bought a condo. I got a great promotion at work. Like things are like crushing it. And then you're like, gosh, now this monkey wrench happened, right? You have cancer. Life flashes before your eyes. And I am immediately thinking like, oh God, cancer aside, from my career perspective, how is this going to impact my career and my promotability and my ability to perform well, as you were mentioning? And how do I take my story and do I keep it private, or do I share that and be a role model for other people who might really be struggling with breast cancer? And that was a really challenging conversation to have, with my now husband to decide, are we going to be public about this? My parents definitely had an opinion about that. They come from a generation where you don't talk about health issues. You're just either not feeling well or you're fine or you're going to be okay. We don't go into the details of actually what's going on. And I know that that is very common across a lot of different cultures as well, where we don't talk about, our medical, like you don't talk about politics, medical, or like salary information, right? These are the things like we don't chat about. But I decided to share my story because I knew that there would be other people who could relate to what I was going through and needed to see that type of support, and that it is going to be okay and that there's resources out there. So I published on social media. my colleagues are friends with me and follow me on social media. The moment I pressed post and share, like it was out there. And that was a cognizant choice. And so I really appreciate that you're like, it's a personal choice and it doesn't have to happen at the exact moment that you're diagnosed either. You might decide, years later that you want to share your story as well. So again, that timing is really personal. Though I did know I had to talk to my employer as soon as I found out that I had a positive diagnosis, to talk to my manager and let my manager know that obviously I'm going to be a little bit distracted in the coming days. And, how do I focus on my job, juggle a variety of medical appointments, because immediately they want to get you in to do all sorts of testing and screening. I would need to take time off for these medical appointments as I figured out my treatment plan, and then potentially some longer time off as well. So in that experience, luckily I had a really great supportive manager, and they recommended also at that time looping in HR to talk about, different leave options that I was entitled to. But I would love to hear from your perspective, like when you're talking and coaching people who are sharing this information with their employer, how would I know what my time off benefits would be, or knowing what I'm entitled to, or the rights that I have to take time off to deal with a cancer diagnosis that is classified, I believe, as a disability?
Right. Yes. Under the American with Disabilities Act, cancer can be considered a disability. And some states actually specifically list cancer as a disability. But in terms of taking time off from work, I would always suggest, first of all, look at your employee manual, because some companies actually may be more generous than the law requires. So first of all, knowing just somebody might not be aware even that, in fact, somebody that's affected by cancer may have had like the best health and the best shape of their life, not even taken that many sick days. So they don't even know how many sick days they've taken. They might not have taken sick days in years. So I would say that, first of all, someone should figure out, how many sick days they have, how many sick days they have left, because that's a good starting off point. But then after that, taking time, if someone feels that they need to take more time off from work, whether to go through treatment or to recover from treatment, or if there's a procedure and the recovery time, then a good place to look is the Family and Medical Leave Act, or FMLA. And it does give eligible employees the right to take up to 12 weeks of unpaid job and health benefit protected leave per year. So what's really important for someone to understand about this is that this is unpaid. And I recognize that someone going through treatment, and basically anyone that's working, really does need their salary, but certainly someone who's working. So I don't minimize that fact that it is unpaid, and that, of course, can have consequences on someone's budget. However, the benefit of this law is that by taking those 12 weeks, someone still has to have their job kept open for them, and they don't lose their health benefits if they're getting them through their job, for example. So I think, being able to return to a job, and also being able throughout the process to keep their health insurance, which in some cases can even be more valuable in that time period than even a salary, just because of really high medical expenses. I think that those are really positives as well. So I want to emphasize that someone does not have to take all 12 weeks at once.
I was just going to ask that question.
Yeah. I think that that's a lot, a lot of times, folks think, okay, well, yeah, but I don't need 12 weeks, but what if I have to take more? So that can be in, increments. So, that is something, for example, that someone can think about. It can be taken all at once or in smaller increments. I will say that the employee has to have worked for their employer for at least 12 months. Okay. And in that past year, to have worked for at least 1,250 hours, which is basically, it comes out to approximately part-time. So it doesn't have to be that someone has worked full-time. So that's, I think, the challenge. If somebody's thinking about career moves, and treatment, I wouldn't discourage it. I'm just saying, keep that in mind in terms of, okay, if somebody's thinking about, okay, taking time off, that it's having to work for their employer for at least 12 months. So that's why I would say also check the employee manual, because there might be some things in there that, are a pleasant surprise in terms of someone's rights.
That's a really good point. I'm glad you bring up the fact that the 12 weeks don't have to be consecutive either. And so I think this is a really helpful discussion to have with your manager, HR, or your oncologist. If you're going through chemotherapy, you might know that the week of treatment is going to be really, challenging, and you're going to might have some like really severe side effects that are going to prevent you from physically being at work, or if you don't have an accommodation like being able to work remotely or from home, to take some time off during those weeks. And so I definitely know women in our SBC survivingbreastcancer.org community who kind of have an off and on week on, week off, depending on what their treatment cycles are for chemotherapy, and or, how many weeks do you need for recovering after surgery if you're going through, a lumpectomy or a double mastectomy or some combination thereof, and or reconstruction that might be taking place. So really understanding the full picture so you can plan out that time for your recovery and what your personal needs are going to be. I ended up taking 12 weeks concurrently in my situation. And I definitely want to talk a little bit also about, accommodations that we could ask for. So I had chemotherapy. I had about 6 months of chemotherapy first. And my employer, again, was absolutely fabulous. I was able to work from home a couple days a week. And this was pre-COVID. So this wasn't like a normal thing. It was an ask, right? To say, okay, can I cut down on my commute? I know I'm going to need to take naps. Again, I'm not saying like hour naps. I need that 10 minutes of like lying down horizontal just to regroup. A lot of my work involves, like a lot of us, we're on computer screens a lot. Some of us are in Excel files. We're very, the eyes get tired, the brain gets tired, and fatigue is real. So being able to have those breaks were really important. And then when I had my surgery, I was going from, 4 weeks of recovery time right into radiation, which was going to be about a month of radiation treatment that also impacts fatigue and needing to go to the hospital literally Monday through Friday for 5 to 6 weeks. I almost fell off the exam table. I was like, wait, I have to go in every single day? I didn't know that was radiation, but why would I know? I've never gone through it before. And so, the disruption of trying to hold down my job while having these weekly appointment or daily appointments for 5 weeks, it didn't make any sense. So I was able to kind of, knowing what my plan was going to look like, take those 12 weeks to really focus on my recovery, my health, the radiation, and, getting my energy back up. So when I did come back to work, I could, be more present and not worrying about the appointments. So,
That's good to hear your story. I'm glad to hear that you had a good experience with your employer too.
100%. I think that makes a lot of difference. And also thinking about accommodations, we don't know what we can ask for, such as, working remotely or having a flexible schedule. One of the things that I asked for was a stand-up desk, because a lot of the medicines that I was on cause, joint pain. So sitting down for too much, like for 8 hours, that was a problem. I needed to get up. I needed to walk around. It was nice to have a desk where I could stand and just feel more, attentive with my work. And I was looking in some of your manuals too. I didn't even think about this, but asking for different type of lighting in your office could be really beneficial as well. Because again, if you're staring at a computer, you might have migraines or headaches, or, those fluorescent office lights can be really challenging to work under. So, or something like a quieter space so you can concentrate. I think it's important. We talk a lot about that transition going back to work after a cancer diagnosis. And to me, that almost seemed harder than getting the news itself, because it finally hits you that you're muscling through all the treatments, and then it hits you. You're like, oh my gosh, I just went through a cancer diagnosis that was incredibly traumatic. I'm going back to work. Everyone missed me. They were like, oh, you look great. And now here's the paperwork and everything that we put on pause, but you're back now. And they just expect you to bounce right back and jump right in. And we know that is actually not how the experience goes. It is mentally and emotionally draining. And just because we start to have our hair grow back or we are showing up to work doesn't mean that the cancer isn't top of mind most of the time. So I think that mental health is really important, and to leverage accommodations as you need them is equally important.
Yes. And I just want to add to that I think that, especially, and I think you kind of alluded to this, it's hard to know in advance what someone might be experiencing if they haven't necessarily had that specific treatment before. So it's really hard sometimes to think about, well, what accommodations might I even ask for because they haven't gone through the treatment yet, or they're just starting. So I think that in
Yes.
this case, first of all, I think the medical team can be really helpful. I think, there's things that someone can do on their own in terms of their rights, and understanding their rights can actually inform sometimes conversations with their doctor. So they can ask their oncologist, well, what is the expected recovery time from this? When they
Mm-hmm.
plan out their sick time or something like that. Now the doctor might say it depends on the person, and you can ask, well, what is the range? Most patients that have this similar type of situation, what is in this situation can I expect? Maybe you can ask, okay, well, what are some of the side effects? I really want to continue working, but I may ask for some accommodations. What are the side effects? Maybe, fortunately, amazingly, there aren't that many serious side effects. And it's helpful to know that. Maybe the person amazingly won't need any accommodations. But, unfortunately, a lot of treatments do have side effects.
Yes.
So, what are the side effects? Now, maybe, it can be different for each person. And, yourself, and you'll know after going through it. But maybe there's some things where the doctor says, you know what, you can't lift X amount of pounds of
Exactly.
something, or you can't, most patients experience fatigue. There'll be some things that might come up that you can already start to think to yourself over time. Maybe the doctor has helped, or the medical team has helped write, any letters, or has worked with patients on accommodations in the past. And they could say, for someone going through this treatment, they've asked for this accommodation. They may not know that answer, but why not tap into their knowledge base by knowing that you have rights to ask for reasonable accommodations, even if you don't remember all the details, or even if you're not sure what to ask. If you're sitting in that doctor's office, hopefully you can squeeze in a question or two
Mm-hmm.
about what kinds of things someone might be able to expect, even if they haven't brought it up, so that you can say, well, and how might this affect my work? Or, having that extra conversation with them could help you when you start to brainstorm what might be right for you.
Exactly. And you just touched upon something I think we should highlight is these letters that doctors can write for you. I think this is another empowering tool before you go to your manager or HR, that your doctor, if you are willing to disclose your diagnosis, they could actually write the recommendation for that type of accommodation. So that way there's certification, so to speak, that you're not just coming out of the blue asking for these things, but there's a medical reason.
Right. And in some cases, depending on someone's comfort level, the doctor may not have to put as many details about someone's medical condition in the letter. For example, it might not necessarily matter to the employer. There might be certain certification that's, required, that is supposed to be kept actually not in someone's, it's supposed to be kept in a separate folder from someone's work performance,
Mm-hmm.
because it's more just of like an HR issue versus, a work performance issue.
Yes.
But putting that aside for a moment, is that, in some cases, patients might seek to talk to their oncologist, and, ask, okay, for a certain type of letter, is it appropriate to be more general? What really matters is, going through medical treatment and these side effects. So see what the doctor feels comfortable doing. But a doctor can be an ally in sharing information. It really depends on what specific situation the person's in, but there are different ways. Now the doctor might say, no, I have to write, this and this, and that's and that might be their response, but at least you're opening up that conversation. In some cases, patients may, if their internal medicine doctor has access to their oncology file, maybe the patient might request their oncologist, their primary care physician to write it. So it's on a letterhead, not of an oncologist, but
Sure.
their primary care physician. But of course, that primary care physician want to, verify and make sure the diagnosis and everything. But that, again, is a case by case basis. There might be things that the person can try, and it may not be working out in that way, but it also is something to consider, just to keep, different options open. But yes, a doctor can definitely be an ally, hopefully, in that, either themselves or someone who on their medical team, like a patient navigator or
Absolutely.
nurse.
Super helpful. A couple more questions, if I can ask. So we talked a little bit about, the FMLA being 12 weeks of non-paid medical leave, but job protection and insurance protection. What resources do you typically recommend, or can we go on the website to find resources for financial resources, people going through this cancer treatment, not just during FMLA, but even the, plethora of bills that we get afterwards for cancer treatment? I think my medical bills were upwards of like $150,000, $200,000 that I was racking up. And, it's crazy to hit your deductible come January, but that's the reality of some of the treatments we're on.
Right. On top of all of someone's medical challenges and on top of trying to secure one's rights, the financial toxicity aspect is heartbreaking. Just how much it costs people to undergo treatment. That it's not like it's an optional
Right,
thing,
right.
a vacation or something. It is, treatment that they have to go through. So I will say. So first of all, the CLRC, we do get this question very often. While we do not provide financial assistance, we don't disperse any funds. We do provide information about if someone contacts us about concerns financially about different organizations and also specific in some cases to their diagnosis. So there might be organizations that can help provide either some stipends or support. But there also might be some for that specific diagnosis. So, for example, breast cancer. I know that in the breast cancer community there are different organizations, but it might be helpful for someone to contact us and get a list. Also, I will say that when someone is the way that I like to think about it is when someone is concerned about financial costs, is that because we provide information about reasonable accommodations and helping someone keep their job as well as FMLA, that some of the biggest ways that someone can fight back against those medical costs is by having that health insurance and by keeping their job. So I think that that's, one aspect that we do help just on the front end of someone keeping their job and also, taking time off, but being able to keep their job on top of that. And then the health insurance aspect that will hopefully at least provide some support against financial toxicity. And another aspect that I think that is worth mentioning is that if one reason that maybe health insurance costs could be very high is that either a procedure or a medicine is not covered so under health insurance. And so we also provide information about health insurance appeals. And I will say that even if and I understand someone might not be able to pause treatment to go through the appeals process. I totally get it. So I completely understand that a health insurance denial can be just so difficult to go through. But I will say when someone gets that letter, don't immediately throw it away, even though you see like the denial and you just don't even want to keep reading because it's not the news that the person ever wants to hear. That letter will is required to have deadlines to appeal. So if you throw away that letter and then you're like, you know what, I'm gonna fight this. No matter what, let's say the person's gonna go through the treatment anyway, but they're like, this is ridiculous. I want to fight this. If they don't file an appeal within the deadline, then that insurance company has every right to deny that appeal, even if it's legitimate, because they didn't follow the basic information. And those deadlines do come up. So I will say that there's no it does take time to appeal, but otherwise there's no downside because if people don't fight to get something covered, then how will something ever change? So in this situation, a doctor can also be an ally in this. You could say, I've been denied. The doctor will be like, oh, that's ridiculous, or that's ridiculous, but unfortunately it happens so often. They may have letters that they've already written that won't take that long, and they can help you submit why it's medically necessary for you to go through that treatment. So I think it's really important to appeal, and that's another way to combat. So I'm not minimizing in any way the resources that can help pay for treatment, whether it's copays, can help with copays, can help with transportation costs, can sometimes help for lodging if someone has to travel to a different cancer center for treatment. So we do have resources that we can send to someone. Some are based on someone's location. Certain states there might be an organization in that state that helps in addition to other organizations. So I will say that, I hesitate to list anyone specific. And I also would say that, there might be certain things that they do help pay for, but not help with others. But we can definitely provide those resources if someone contacts us, and certainly people do. But I will say that there's other things, to consider in terms of do appeal that, and, do try to get that reasonable accommodation so you can keep the job, and do try to, if you qualify for FMLA, to take that time off so you can keep your job and health insurance.
Absolutely. That's, it's so hard to feel empowered as a patient, especially when you're half naked sitting in a Johnny and trying to advocate for yourself. I too was denied a specific type of chemotherapy. And I remember getting this denial letter and bursting into tears because I was like, how how dare they say no to this when it is a life-saving treatment that my oncologist, who I have full faith in, is, prescribing this for a very specific reason. And luckily, it was like one of those days where I had an appointment with my doctor anyway. So I came in with my paper and I was like, waving it like, look what I received. Why is this possible? How is this possible? And, I think one of the things that I still don't have a full comprehension of is, when doctors, and we should bring on an oncologist to speak with all of us about this topic, right? Is we have like the guidelines and, how do insurance companies determine what falls within those guidelines or outside of those guidelines and what is covered and not covered by insurance. And because science seems to be outpacing those guidelines, a lot of times we are in a very fortunate situation where our oncologist might be recommending something because the studies are showing that it's really beneficial for the patient to be on X, Y, and Z treatment. And so my doctor was like, absolutely, we'll appeal this. And that's when it dawned on me how much paperwork and administrative work our oncologists actually do for us behind the scenes to make sure that we can get the coverage that we need. So I think absolutely, if anyone is receiving a denial, to talk to their oncologist because they will hopefully fight for you and in that regard.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that you had that conversation. And in some cases, it might seem shocking, but the medical team might not know you've been denied.
Exactly.
So I think it's really important. I know it could be just that extra straw that broke the camel's back and feeling like everything is against someone. And I urge someone to consider the fact that unfortunately those health insurance denials are common. It's not something personal against you, and that they know that unfortunately maybe somebody won't appeal.
Right.
And and that's, an unfortunate fact, but I would say appeal, like in your situation, the doctor had a lot of empathy. They understood that this is a treatment you must have. And it's not going to be for the insurance company to make that ultimate decision. It's going to be for that doctor and to appeal. Now, obviously, technically, it is technically the insurance company's decision. But the point is that, the doctor can advocate for you. They have that medical expertise, and it's worth it to at least bring that letter to the doctor, and hopefully they can help you with that. If it's the first time that they've experienced that denial for that type of treatment, then hopefully they'll be able to have that, they'll write that letter, and it might help someone else in the future.
Exactly.
So I would definitely say to appeal, even though it feels like just so disheartening.
I know.
To have that extra ounce of strength to just say, well, I'm going to tell my doctor about this, so they're aware. And yes, doctors, I think, do have a lot of administrative work on top of their, medical treatment of patients. So that's why when I mentioned, I always hope that someone who's an oncologist will contact the Cancer Legal Resource Center to find out rights so that they're informed. So at least when a patient says something, that they know also how to guide the patient. Why don't we submit an appeal, or why don't we write a letter to help your job accommodate you, just for that awareness. They don't have to, they don't have to do all that work, but just for their awareness to guide the patient so that the patient can help be a partner in their care in that way too.
Absolutely. I think one of the big takeaways from today's conversation is to just ask. And I liked how you started off the conversation. Like, even if we don't know what to ask, our oncologists and medical teams have probably been asked these questions before. So asking them, what else should I know? What other resources have you recommended to other patients, right? Just like the very high level generic. And you were talking about financial toxicity. And so, that just makes me think, is there, discount parking options for me if I have to come here every day? When I was going through radiation, I mentioned it was a Monday through Friday, 5 to 6 week treatment. They gave me a placard. I got free parking because I had to go every single day. And that would add up ridiculously because I'm in Boston, and parking for even just 30 minutes is outrageous. So it was nice to be proactive and ask, what type of, small things that will add up to make things just a little bit less financially toxic for you. So I appreciate you mentioning that. I want to encourage everyone to go check out your website because I feel like we just scratched the surface on some of the major topics that people ask about, whether it's, being diagnosed with cancer and now how do you navigate work and, the finances. But you also talk about and have resources around genetic testing and rights around getting, your genetic information and what that means in terms of your being protected, as well as, end of life planning and a whole bunch of other resources as well. So I hope we can continue the conversation with a part 2 and continue to uncover some of those legal rights and resources that you guys cover as well. But Shelly, is there anything else that you really want to share with our listeners that we might not have touched upon, or any other last words of wisdom?
Oh, I will say that just if someone takes away one thing from this conversation is to know that even when some days really feel just that so many things are against them, and to know that even with a lot of challenges, and I wish there were even more protections for people affected by cancer, for them to know that there are protections out there. Even if someone listens to this or watches this and says, oh, I don't remember exactly how long I have to work at my employer or how much time I have off, that information is out there. Don't be too hard on yourself that you have to remember all the details, and recall them immediately. You can always look it up or contact us or listen to this podcast or watch it again and relearn the information. So just knowing that it's out there is already the first step to advocating for yourself. And when you're advocating for yourself, hopefully, you're asserting information that, will help you. And you're also in some cases educating medical teams about different programs. They might not even know that there's a patient support program out there for someone with your diagnosis, but then because you've qualified for this program and you're talking about it with your doctor, they might, for example, they may have to fill out another form. They'll know about that, and maybe one day they'll help someone else. So I really think that when you're looking into all of this, you're not just doing it for yourself. You're also one day maybe helping someone else in the future. Maybe you have a conversation with your employer, someone else gets diagnosed with cancer, and that employer feels actually very comfortable because, wow, they've had such a success story where you asked for accommodation and everything was great. So maybe someone else decides to have that conversation and they don't even know all the information but then, that employer's already had a good experience working something out with you, and that will help that other person too. So I really do believe that hopefully someone, feels like they'll just check a little bit about their rights and try to put themselves in the best possible circumstances when so much is not in that person's control. And that could be a lot. But, to think, okay, well, maybe there's something out there that can help.
100%. I love that. Thank you so much, Shelly. This has been such a rich conversation. I know I was taking notes over here. I'm definitely going to listen to it again as well. Even being a survivor several years out from my initial diagnosis, it is something that is still always top of mind for us living with early stage disease. We're always concerned about recurrence. Again, I was talking a little bit about my career path, would I want to switch careers or go to a new employer knowing that there's going to be this waiting time in the event that the cancer bubbles up again in an opportune time? It's never an opportune time, right? And so lots of great questions, lots of great resources. Thank you so much for taking the time for being with us today.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
And thank you everyone for listening to our show. I would like to acknowledge that all of the information on our podcast are from personal experiences and are not a substitute for professional medical advice. You should always contact your medical care team. If you're looking for specific topics or would like to be a guest on our show, please feel free to reach out to me. My email is laura@survivingbreastcancer.org. Until next time, keep on thriving.